Gerred. Welcome to part 2 of my MIT restaurant application capstone presentation. In part 2, I'll be discussing database and API. The database I used was Strapi. This is where you'll find all the persistent and stored data for restaurants, dishes, users, and orders. I did not add any new features to the database, but I have added multiple restaurants and dishes. The design decisions I made were to keep it simple and easy to use by adding more restaurants and dishes. I wanted to make the application look like a more finished and bigger application. Some challenges I encountered were having to create a new Strapi database after I deployed my backend. I overcame this challenge by saving all of the data and photos to a separate Strapi database on localhost so that I can go back into that database and grab all of the data that I need to input in case I need to create the database again. So here is a video of the Strapi platform and how easy it is to use and add things to. So here you can see the restaurants and all the restaurants that I have and how easy it is to add a new restaurant with a description, image, name. You can also add or delete users by just clicking. And you can add dishes, you can add multiple different collections if you wanted. It's just really easy to see what you're going to actually be putting on the page. So next I will be discussing the API, and the API I used for this is GraphQL and Apollo. Now I have Strapi on here again, just because it works with the API. And Strapi comes from the word bootstrap and helps bootstrap your API. So bootstrap again is for styling and user interface. So for what Strapi does is makes it easier to style and just makes the overall look of the user interface a lot easier to do with Strapi. So you can see here with the get restaurant dishes GraphQL, you're getting what we saw in Strapi there. What you're getting is the restaurant ID and name, and it's going to pull up the dishes that belong to that restaurant. So it's going to pull up the dishes with the ID, name, description, price, image. This is what we just saw in Strapi, and it's going to pull up that information that we've entered into Strapi. Now I use GraphQL because it only needs one endpoint to get data into the query structure. I did not use a REST API because it would require several separate API endpoints. So GraphQL queries dishes, restaurant, orders, users, and also add, delete, find one, create, and count. So GraphQL does this with just one API endpoint. A REST API would need a separate API endpoint for dishes, a separate endpoint for restaurant, a separate one for orders, etc. The Apollo client searches restaurants and dishes. So here you can see in my example, I have we're using the method of get. You can also use the post method, which sends changes from the client or front end to the server or back end, or put, which revises or adds to existing information. But here we're using get in this example. And what get is doing is retrieving the data from the server or the back end. So here you can see that the path is dishes and the handler is dish.find. And what .find does is it returns an array of matched collection for dishes. So this will find the dishes and return the dishes. So this next one is dish.count. And what .count does is it returns the number of documents that match that dish. So it's not returning all the dishes, but it's returning the number of how many dishes there are in that collection. And this here, dish.findOne, and this has path ID. It's going to find one returns the first document in the collection. Now, on this example, this is all that you can see here, but there are many more, like .update and .delete. So update would modify an existing document or documents in the collection. Delete would delete the document from that collection, etc. So thank you for watching part 2 of my capstone presentation.